With the year 2022 coming to a close, within the next few weeks or so, we now are about to enter the year of 2023, and there's a list of matchups that I want to see next year. In this video, I'm going to talk about top 6 fights that I'm hoping to see next year in the UFC. I'm going to start with honorable mentions before I get into the official list. Because these two fights, they're kind of a done deal. They're not necessarily in the works, they're rumored, but it's kind of obvious they're going to happen. So, of course, Aljamain Sterling and Henry Cejudo, that's a fight that I've wanted to see for, a long time, when Aljo was on the come up, lurking in the top 5, and Henry Cejudo is the bantamweight champion. I was always interested to see how their, styles, match up against each other. And, now we get to find out, and there's a good rivalry there, a fun build-up. And then, of course, I know we're going to see Ngannou versus Jones. That one kind of seems inevitable. But I'm going to start with number 6, Khamzat Chimaev versus Colby Chaos Covington. I think that fight will be the next one in the welterweight division. That's just the fight that fans are talking about. But I'm interested to see how these two match up against each other, because Khamzat Chimaev, that dude's a terrifying force. He seems unstoppable with his, dominant wrestling, grappling style. He just takes guys down. He has his way with them, and he smashes them on the ground and either gets a TKO or wraps them up and subs them. But we saw him have some adversity against Gilbert Burns, and I think Colby Covington could be a good test, because Covington has the wrestling to match Khamzat Chimaev, and can take him on the feet, and has the cardio advantage over Khamzat Chimaev, and might have the durability to deal with Khamzat's power, and he has the overall experience, which makes this interesting, because either Khamzat, he could pass this test with flying colors and maybe run through Colby, or maybe Colby derails the hype train. I think the buildup would be absolutely fun, and I think this fight makes sense. Winner of this gets the winner of Usman versus Edwards 3. Now, moving up the list to number 5, Charles do Bronx Oliveira versus Beneil Dariush. This is a matchup that I've actually always wanted to see, since Charles Oliveira was the world champion. Beneil is the dark horse of the division who's been overlooked for a long time, but he came back after a layoff and reminded everybody who the F he is when he styled on Matthias Gamrot. And I think now would be the perfect time to make this matchup. With Oliveira, coming off the loss of his title, losing it to the scales, but he was seen as the uncrowned champ. But Islam took that status from him when he won the vacant title fight against Oliveira. So Oliveira, former champion, number 1 contender, and he's looking to rebound. And Beneil Dariush is looking to climb his way into title contention. I think Oliveira is the perfect opponent to get him to a title shot. And I think style-wise, this is a very interesting and fun matchup. Both guys are good. They're dangerous on the feet, and they're dangerous on the ground. It'll be interesting to see how these two will deal with each other's stand-up, and it'll be interesting to see how these two will deal with each other on the ground as well. I hope it does happen. I do think that it is the fight to make. And number 4, Yuri Prochazka versus Magomed Ankalaev. With Yuri Prochazka vacating the belt after withdrawing from the Glover rematch due to an injury, and Ankalaev, kind of getting robbed of what should have been a title win against Jan Blachowicz. I do think that Ankalaev will be fighting for the belt again sometime soon. It's inevitable, and I'm hoping that it's going to be him and Yuri, although I don't know what's going to happen with the title picture. I don't know who fights the winner of Hill versus Teixeira. I hope it's Ankalaev, and I think Ankalaev beats both if that's the case. And then hopefully this aligns with Yuri Prochazka's comeback. Maybe Ankalaev beats the winner of Hill versus Teixeira this summer, and then by the end of the year welcomes back Yuri Prochazka. And I think this matchup will be interesting. These two are kind of polar opposites. You got Ankalaev, who's a very calm, calculated, patient, but dangerous counter striker, versus Yuri, who's just a chaotic, wild madman, but also very dangerous and can knock out anybody that stands in front of him. I think this would definitely be a fun one if it does happen. And as for number 3, I want to see Conor McGregor versus Rafael dos Anjos. You know, I'm surprised this fight has never been rescheduled after all these years. They were supposed to fight in 2016 in a champ versus champ matchup when RDA was the lightweight champion and Conor was the featherweight champion. But unfortunately, RDA pulled out with an injured foot, leading to McGregor fighting Nate Diaz on short notice. And of course, we know how that all played out. You know, Conor lost to Nate, then beat Nate. And then by the time he fought for the lightweight belt, there was a different champion, not named RDA. But now I think this is kind of the perfect fight for both at this stage of their careers. RDA is on the older side, and he's given up on the title picture, and he's just kind of looking for some fun fights and some money fights. And I think RDA has kind of earned that. I mean, he's fought in pretty much all the big names across both weight classes, lightweight and welterweight. I think it's fitting that he gets a chance to get that red panty night with Conor McGregor. And I think this could be, you know, maybe a winnable fight for Conor on his comeback. Although I think RDA is a bad matchup, you never know. Conor might stand a good chance against Rafael dos Anjos. And I mean, they were able to make McGregor versus Cerrone after all these years. I'm sure they can reschedule RDA versus McGregor. I think these two have unfinished business and they need to settle that rivalry. And number 2, this one is very unpopular. Juliana Pena versus Irene Aldana. A battle between two of my top favorite women's bantamweights and women's MMA fighters overall. It's a matchup that I've kind of always wanted to see, and these two have been in the top 5 of the same division for years. It's almost surprising that these two have never fought each other yet, and I think this would actually be a pretty good fight, you know? An interesting clash of styles. You know, you got the grappling and pressure and endurance of Juliana Pena and durability of Pena versus, you know, the grit of Irene Aldana, the boxing of Aldana, and the takedown defense and evolving ground game of Irene Aldana. I think it'll be very interesting. And I think this fight actually kind of does make sense as well. You got Pena, who's the number 1 contender, and Aldana, who is looking to climb her way up the ladder to fight for the belt. This could be a good title eliminator, or who knows? Maybe it works out through Irene winning the belt off Amanda. Unlikely, but let's say that happens. Pena works her way back. Perfect case scenario, dream scenario, these two face off in a title fight. I'm hoping to see it. And I think this would actually be a very fun scrap, you know. Latin fighters, Latinas, Latinos, they don't disappoint when it comes to putting on entertaining fights. And I don't think this one would disappoint either. And number 1, Zhang Weili versus Thug Rose Namajunas 3. This, I believe, is an important matchup in women's MMA. This would be like the first huge trilogy to ever happen in women's MMA. We haven't had Nunes versus Shevchenko 3, but I think Zhang versus Rose, I mean, 2023 is the perfect time for this fight to happen. Zhang just got the belt back. Rose can either get a title shot right now, despite coming off a title loss, or, I mean, I have no doubt she can easily earn another shot off a win. And I think Rose and Weili, they got unfinished business, and there's high stakes in this matchup. I think a trilogy between these two would be a battle to determine who's the greatest strawweight of all time, because Rose has beaten almost every strawweight champ apart from Carla Esparza, but she doesn't really need to beat Carla. Beating Zhang 3 times it's more valuable than any win over Carla Esparza, and that would make people kind of forget the Esparza fight ever happened because it is forgettable. Or Weili has a chance to have a win over every strawweight champion and avenging that Rose loss, and then Weili could maybe cement her legacy as the greatest strawweight of all time. I think this fight would be huge. Both are household names, big names in women's MMA. So I really hope that we do get to see this matchup next year. But that's it for my list of fights I want to see in 2023. Let me know what fights you are hoping to see next year. Be sure to like and subscribe, and peace out.